What is up, everybody? Happy Victory Monday. Welcome in to an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We've got the one and only Wisco Grant. Of course, Grant, great to have you here talking Packers once again. And Perri freaking Goldstein, of course, from Packs What She Said, and the Pack-A-Day podcast, and like a million other things. Perri, Grant, it is awesome to be talking a Packers victory with you. How the heck are you guys doing?
I'm good. Packers won. We're recording as the Mets are playing game one, so I'm a little stressed out, but the Packers won. So I got one win under my belt today. So we're happy.
Grant, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. As we were talking about a minute ago, like that was the dream scenario is they get out early in the conditions maybe that Arizona is less suited for, and then it becomes a celebration at Lambeau. So not as stressful, and we weren't kind of waiting till the final play, literally like we had to last week.
Yeah, a lot of really fun stuff to discuss out of this one. We had the bounce back of Romeo Doubs. We had a great game from Jordan Love. Defense, I thought, was up to the task. And before we even jump into anything else, I just want to say, I think this Cardinals team is a pretty solid team. I don't think they're as bad as maybe it looked today. And I really enjoyed watching their film going into this week. And they obviously just beat the 49ers a week ago. I think this is a pretty solid Cardinals team overall. Not the best team. They're probably not going to be a playoff team or anything like that. And Green Bay just went right through them, which was a ton of fun. Before we go any further, we've got to pick our Luigi's Victory Pizza Player of the Game. So Perri, I'm going to give you the honors first. We'll all pick one from today's game, but I will give you the first honors of going first. And who do you want as your Luigi's Player of the Game?
Ooh, hard. Let's give it to Romeo Doubs for having a 2-touchdown day, coming back off of obviously not his best week, nor a week that he would say he put his best self forward. But he came back. I just love the way the Packers and he handled everything. It could have spiraled much, much worse, but instead he came back. He had 2 touchdowns. The team and everyone rallied around him, and it was just great to see him back contributing as normal because he's a really important part of this offense.
Grant, you are allowed to also say Romeo Doubs, or you can go in a different direction. Who is your Luigi's Pizza Player of the Game?
I was going to say Doubs too, for all the reasons that Perri said, but also like the 2 catches that he made. I know it's difficult to say this because the Packers won by so much, but like he went up and got 2 balls that weren't necessarily easy and turned 2 kind of iffy 50-50 plays into touchdowns, which certainly helped the Packers build a lead. So just like in the flow of this game, all of the drama of last week aside, like I thought he was really important. A player that also came to mind, just to add another name, I thought Keyshawn Nixon did a couple really nice things, a pass defense and then a return, which it's funny because Jaden Reed got banged up on that return. And I was watching with some buddies at the bar. I said, we might have reached like Jaden Reed is too valuable to maybe be back there returning punts. And then Nixon goes back there and uncorks a really nice. So I would say Romeo Doubs, but also Keyshawn Nixon would be, if I have to go with a different name, it would probably be that one.
I'm excited to talk about Keyshawn Nixon. I also want to talk about the Jaden Reed punt return. Those are some miscellaneous ones I have on our rundown today and our notes today. We're going to go 3 for 3 here. I have Romeo Doubs as well as my player of the game in this one. And I think this was such a huge game for Romeo to just, this sort of seals the, we can put this behind us sort of game, right? Like if this was one of those things where Matt, I don't even know that it would have necessarily been stubborn, but if he would have been like, you know what, Romeo's got to go to the back of the line and he's got to earn his way back up. Like he probably could have gone in that direction, but it's sort of just, not making it so that your best game plan is potentially out there, which is never a good thing to do. And he recognized, you know what, we're better with Romeo in the lineup. He sort of paid for his transgressions by having this, suspension a week ago, put him right back into the lineup. He technically didn't start, but then basically played a ton after that. So I don't really read too much into that. And then he just had this really good game, including, like you said, Grant, 2 big time touchdowns that were, again, kind of 50-50 plays that could have gone either way. And, those are plays that can sort of swing this game in a pretty significant way as well. So I thought this was awesome to be able to get him back ingrained in the offense, put this entire situation behind them. And that's what I feel like it really did in this one. It's done. It's over with. This was the only remaining question of like, how did they get him reintegrated? Was he going to be still a key part of this offense, or were they going to put him or make him work his way back up? And now it just feels like it's done. It's over with and we can move on, which is an awesome. So not to mention the fact that even if there was no Romeo Doubs situation, period, like still a 3-catch, 49-yard, 2-touchdown performance again on 2 key plays in the game is worthy in and of itself. So I'm right there with you guys.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some key takeaways in this one, because obviously our player of the game was Romeo Doubs, but I want to get your gut reactions to this game just in general. Grant, I'll start with you this time. Any key takeaway that you have? It can be something that we want to talk about eventually or not, but what was your gut feel after this one?
I think the exact type of game that we were hoping for. The Vikings game, and we did a podcast after that game, was a moment where it felt like, okay, Jordan Love's back. He got through some rust. It felt like by the end of the Vikings game, some things had started to fall into place. And I remember 2 weeks ago thinking, all right, the next couple games, we should really, if this is the team that we hope that they are, right, we should see them make some strides. And I thought they made some nice strides against the Rams last week, but still left us wanting a little bit. This week is kind of really when it all came together. And Arizona certainly kind of threw the Packers some bones, but certainly their most complete game. And I thought the way that they started, the game wasn't decided in the first quarter, but the Packers certainly dictated the terms that the rest of the game would be played on. And I actually really like Kyler Murray as a player. I think he's a ton of fun, and I like watching the Cardinals. But if I'm being honest, that's not the guy in those conditions that I would want if I needed to mount a 2 or 3 score comeback. So the fact that the offense and the defense, Matt LaFleur talked complimentary football, built that game state in the first quarter and dictated the rest of the way that the game was going to go. I thought that was huge.
Perri?
Yeah, this was the most complete game we've seen so far this season. And I think to Grant's point, it's been like mounting towards that so far this season, but we haven't actually seen them put it all together. And this was the game where they did it. Jordan looks like he's fully back to the player that we saw in 2023, 4 touchdowns. I don't even really count the interception because I don't think that's a real interception if Bo Melton doesn't slip. But also just like, I mean, spreading the ball around, nine players caught passes, like amazing day on the ground. Defense did everything they could to make stops when they needed. I mean, they held the Cardinals to 13 points, three turnovers, even special teams minus the 1 missed field goal, just like all of it. I mean, I think looking at it, if you really want to get into like the nitty, you can probably pick at some bad things that they could clean up. But this is the first game that I came away being like, that's the Green Bay Packers I wanted to see this season. That's the Green Bay Packers I know that they can be. And I hope this is how they play going forward, because if they do, I think they're really hard to beat.
We are 3 for 3 again. I'm on the 1,000,000% same page with you guys. This is the Packers that we wanted to see. We've been waiting to see, and it doesn't always have to happen right away. Like there is a process to this, and we knew it would kind of get there eventually. And I'm not saying that this is a finished product by any means either. I think there's still a ways to go from a growth standpoint, and they can even play better, which is a scary thought. But we wanted to see a team play mistake-free football. And for the most part, they really did not beat themselves and just go out in all 3 phases and really show that they can put a complete game together. And even in that little middle period where Arizona goes down and scores a touchdown, there were some self-inflicted wounds on that one. You had the Jair Alexander 15-yard penalty. There was another penalty later in the drive that helped set that one up a little bit. But like that was the one drive that Arizona basically had the entire game. And you're willing, like that's going to, like the other team gets paid too. If they have 1 touchdown drive for the game, you're probably doing a pretty darn good job. And then, you know, the other one, a field goal drive, I thought even just limiting them to a field goal to start the second half was important. And the field goal right before the half was set up by the fluke interception that gave them great field position. So I thought the defense was great. As you mentioned, Perri, special teams for the most part held their own outside of maybe a missed field goal. It just felt like this, we knew the vision, but we didn't really see it. We saw it in flashes through 5 games. This, we saw like, this is the vision. This is the team. Now, how often can you do it and how consistent can you make it? But we finally got the outcome that we were kind of looking for and hoping for as we were kind of thinking of this Packers team through the course of the offseason. Go ahead, Perri.
No, let's keep going.
Let's kind of continue with Jordan Love in this one, because I do think this was such a key performance from him. As you mentioned, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, quote unquote, but nothing he did wrong on that play by any means. Just a stupid fluke play where Bo Melton falls down and it goes right to the defender. 119.5 rating, 22 of 32, 258 and 4 touchdowns. The first Packers player to throw back-to-back 4 touchdown games at home since Brett Favre, which is a pretty impressive stat in and of itself. I thought there was a concerted effort from Jordan Love to sort of take what was there early in the game. And as you mentioned so perfectly before, Perri, spread the ball around, get it to his playmakers, let them do some of the heavy lifting in this offense. And then when you needed that big time play, whether it was a scramble that he did a couple of different times to pick up yards and first downs, whether it was the play where he was able to fade back and throw the 50-50 ball up to Romeo Doubs and give him a chance to go make a play. And I actually thought one of my favorite plays in this game was the 4th and 2, the layered throw to Christian Watson was such an unbelievable throw because, I mean, Christian Watson's in the just Bermuda Triangle there, just surrounded by Arizona Cardinals. And to layer that ball over the linebacker, but between the 2 defensive backs and get that only to where Christian Watson could get it and nobody else was such an impressive play. We just saw that sort of all day. And this is the Jordan Love from last season where he's checking into plays, taking what's there for him, and then making the spectacular happens when he needs to. It was a complete performance. And this is certainly the best Jordan Love we've seen in 2024 so far.
Well, in that throw, I think we're talking about the same throw. Like his feet weren't even really set. I'm not a quarterback coach. And yes, like a lot of times his feet aren't set, but to make that throw that demands perfection because it was tucked into such a tight window. Like if you lay a ball out, I think of that throw to Jaden Reed against the Vikings on New Year's Eve last year. You're laying that out. He's running underneath it. It's still a really impressive throw to make when your feet aren't set, but to drive a ball like that without your feet set. And I think, again, the first quarter of this game is so important. Jordan took the balls and the throws that were there, even if they were simple and even if they weren't anything special, but it was about setting up the terms and kind of way that the rest of the game was going to be played. The best way that I can describe it, Jordan Love is best described as a rhythm thrower. Like when he gets in a rhythm, especially with his wide receivers, they can get in a rhythm together. It's not just him. When he gets in a rhythm, the inaccuracies, the mechanical, I don't know, idiosyncrasies, they don't seem to bother him as much. It's when the offense gets bogged down and when they're not on the field because they're going 3 and out that's those things really start to show up. So I think Jordan Love's success, to your point, Andy, on this day was really started by the way the offense came out and executed early and kind of got the ball rolling in the first quarter.
Perri, anything to add on Jordan Love's day?
I mean, not a ton, just like good to see him back to like true form. I do wonder if like maybe the knee bothered him a little bit more, just like his ability to be more mobile in this game was pretty apparent. I definitely think, and I think some of the comparisons to his predecessors are warranted, watching him, get a guy with 12 men on the field and him using his cadence a ton in this game. It's hard not to see like he learned those things from Rodgers and some of his like big arm throws, in the stat you even said, Andy, it's hard not to compare him to Favre, but he's really like, I don't know if I always love the comparisons because he's like genuinely turning into his own player at this point. He's a lot more controlled than Favre. And I think he has like a big playmaking ability. He runs the offense, I should say, in a much different way than we saw Aaron Rodgers do, especially within the Matt LaFleur scheme. I think he's a perfect quarterback fit for what Matt LaFleur wants to do. And I just like that he's turning into his own player, and we're kind of seeing that more and more as the games progress. So I'm excited to see him go up against some of these other defenses that we have coming up in the next few weeks. I know we're going to get to that later because I think he's starting to like see what's happening a lot more. Like to your point, Andy, the 4th and 2, it's just like you thread the needle there. You have to know exactly where you're putting the ball. And his accuracy in this game was spot on.
I think one of the
comparisons, just to add to Perri's point really quick, the comparisons to Favre and Rodgers are funny to me because the idea that he has to simply be one or the other is really funny. And like Perri, I know you're a Mad Men fan, and what I thought of last week is like the idea back in that era when like every woman was either, what was it? Well, now I'm I'm botching the reference, but everyone was either a Marilyn or what was it, Jackie Kennedy? Like like every woman was one of those two. And it's like, well, obviously that's ridiculous. But Packers fandom, we've kind of become the same thing with our quarterbacks. And it is funny, the idea, well, okay, he's Favre. It's like, well, there's probably some other version of a quarterback out there that he can be. Yeah, to your point.
No, very much. I think, where some of that comes from and what's kind of cool about it is you could tell there was stuff. I don't know that I would necessarily define it as handed down from Favre to Rodgers, but it was definitely picked up by Rodgers, that he picked up from Favre. Even some of the cadence stuff, the too many minutes, like just some of the ad lib stuff, even throwing off of his back foot and how he falls. Like there was stuff that Rodgers very much took from Favre in that time that they were together. I don't know. Again, it was something that Favre was always super keen to show him the ropes and show him X's and O's on a chalkboard or anything like that. But Rodgers clearly picked up that stuff. And there are things that I think going from Rodgers to Love, I think Rodgers did a lot of that stuff. And I think even bringing in Tom Clements, when Rodgers, I think, had a lot of say in who that quarterback's coach was going to be. I still, to this day, I don't think Tom Clements, when Rodgers had his say on who that might be, I don't think that was just for Rodgers. I think he knew that Tom Clements was going to be good for Jordan Love as well, great for Jordan Love as well. And I think there was a lot of things that Jordan picked up from Aaron, even again, some of the off the back foot throws, and just the 12 men on the field, the getting guys to the line quickly, the cadence, the ability to draw people off sides. Like there are stuff that we see every single week that's like, all right, that's Aaron. Like you can just see it in his game. And it's not to necessarily say at any point that Jordan is Brett or Jordan is Aaron, but there are these things that have been sort of handed down through the last 30 years that you can still see manifesting themselves in Jordan today that we saw from those two great quarterbacks. And I think it's a compliment to Jordan that this early into his career, like it would have been inevitable that there would have been those kind of comparisons no matter what, if he certainly was not living up to the expectations. And like if he was struggling, but well, Aaron would have done this or Brett would have done that, and it would have been a bummer. But the fact that he's even getting some of those comparisons in the same light is such a compliment to Jordan. And I do think it probably gets overdone sometimes. And some of it is just silly because, of course, he's not Brett, he's not Aaron, he's his own guy. But there are those pieces there, those layers there that we get to dig into. And I don't think it detracts from Jordan. I think it's fun as a fan to see those layers baked into some of the amazing stuff that he's doing. And I think that almost adds to the story, not takes away from it, which is so fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think to his credit, like not everyone would be able to absorb all of that and then execute it on a year.
Right.
So like the fact that he can is incredible. And it just shows like what kind of player that he is. But also I like watching him in the context of all the comparisons, and even the fact that he is, to your point, Andy, doing all those things, those like pass down Green Bay quarterback, things. He's still kind of, you're watching him become his own player as well. And I'm sure we're going to get, Jordan Love-esques that we'll talk about a few seasons down the line. That's like, oh, that's, just a classic Jordan move right there. They'll show themselves, but he's, you can even hear it in announcers saying like, oh, well, that's very not Jordan Love, like, when he does something like out of his norm. And I think that even him being spoken about like that says a lot about what he's been able to show in the short time he's been a starting quarterback.
And they say a lot about like musicians when you're learning to play instruments too, like the way that people find their sound is by trying to copy who they like listening to. So like if you're a piano player or a guitar player, you're trying to sound like the people you really love, and you can't, obviously, because you're not those people. But that's probably pretty similar to football, right? Like Love has watched Aaron Rodgers most notably, but all these quarterbacks he grew up, and he's trying to do those things, but he can't. Or he can't do all of them, or he does them in his own way. And that's how you get a different court. That's how Jordan Love is, with all of these other elements mixed in with his own spin and his own interpretation. That's a cool part. And another reason we're very lucky and spoiled as Packers fans is we get to pick out plays from two absolute all-time greats who which is not new. We know we're spoiled, but it's fun to learn different ways why we're spoiled and all the different reasons why we're spoiled. It is pretty great.
It's why I get all the comparisons to Dua Lipa, because I mirror everything after her and listening to her all those voice inflection things that I do. It's very, very Dua Lipa like. So just trying to copy the best of the best. Two other quick things on offense really quick. I like just Perri just nodding in approval very clearly. Offensive line protection, I thought in this one was awesome. I thought there were some things from a run blocking standpoint that they can still get better at and clean up, but pass pro, especially early in this game, it really forced Arizona's hands to have to kind of come after Green Bay more because they were not winning with 4. And there were plays that, what did Matt say, that he had the ability to bake a pizza back there? It was, of course, a Luigi's pizza, but it was literally like he had time to make a pizza back there. And it did. Like he got to his 4th, read on plays at times, which was awesome. So I thought they did a great job in pass pro. And then just the return of Christian Watson. I said this on the live post-game show, but I really, truly believe that the story and the impact that Christian Watson is going to have on the season still is just very beginning to get written. And we saw it today, 3 catches, 68 yards, a touchdown, just that ability to win over the top. And if you're not aware of him, and I think almost this role for Christian is almost beautiful in a way where he's not like this number 1 targeted guy. And it almost lulls you into a false sense of security at times where you're like, oh yeah, we don't really have to maybe, have a guy over the top of that guy all the time. And then all of a sudden, boom, that 48-yard touchdown or whatever it was to Christian Watson. So just that pure speed, that change of pace that Christian Watson brings is a beautiful thing. And I still think he's going to have a massive impact on the season. So thoughts on Watson, offensive line protection, or anything else on offense before we move to defense?
I feel like we talk a lot about like the impact Christian Watson has when he's on the field. And then when he goes out, it's like, okay, well, we have lots of other weapons. Well, yes, that's true. But you see the way this offense runs when he's not on the field and when he is on the field. And it's not to say that they looked bad without him, but they're much clunkier is like the word I come back to. And his ability to take the top off or just have defenses always having to game plan for him because he can do that big play, big touchdown that we saw in this game is it just can't be understated how much that changes the way defenses play the Packers offense, like period. And it doesn't matter if they never go to it in a game. It's always there. It's always a card that they can pull. It's fun to watch. I hope they do it every game. I love it. But all he needs to just do is be on the field. And that's always a possibility on top of his ability to like run block and, do everything else that Matt LaFleur asks him to. So yes, he's not, the one getting targeted all the time, getting the like majority lion's share of passes to him, but it's this like, I don't know, invisible force field of attention.
It's a gravitational pull. It's a gravitational pull. Yeah. No, you pull players towards him.
Absolutely. Just like so, and then opens up everything else. And it's really hard to quantify, right? Because it's not on a stat sheet what he does in that sense, but it's very real.
Grant,
just on another angle on Christian Watson, like last Tuesday, was it Wednesday or Tuesday? I suppose it doesn't matter. When the locker room was going to be open and we were all going to expect to hear from Romeo Doubs for the first time, right? Since his suspension. I think it was Tuesday. And he didn't, but Christian Watson did. And Christian Watson basically had to be a bit of a proxy, fair or unfair, for Doubs because he was the receiver and he was the one available to speak. And I was on the air when all this happened and we were playing some of the sound and I was just really impressed. I don't know. Working in sports radio, you play a ton of press conferences because it's perfect audio content, right? You can play clips, you can react. And I just really like most everything Christian Watson has to say. I think he gets it. I think he's wired the right way. He is someone as a fan that I would want to buy stock in if he can just stay healthy and have a full season. And that's why that ankle injury, a real blessing that he was able to come back this fast, because I didn't think he'd be able to, but has to be a pain in the butt for him. I just thought the way that he spoke about Dobbs' situation was really mature. He was well-spoken and he didn't mince words too. He's like, it was a significant thing. Like there's going to be some weirdness. Like I was just really impressed with Watson last week. And to some that might not matter. I kind of like knowing a little bit what makes these guys tick as much as you can without actually being in the locker room and interacting with them. I was just really impressed with him last week off the field as much as he was impressive on the field on Sunday.
Really quick aside, just shout out to the Packers training staff, because if you look at that injury to Love early in the year and you looked at the injury to Watson on the field, and I get sometimes injuries look worse than maybe what they are, but like, man, those two both looked awful. And for this training staff to help get Jordan ready by the fact that he could get back when he did against Minnesota, and really like to this week looking I mean, if not 100%, pretty darn close to 100% this week. Again, awesome job there. And then Christian Watson too. Like we thought and assumed like that was probably going to be an injury that would keep him out at least a while. And the fact that he's not only back there today, but able to have the speed still to make those big plays down the field. I know sometimes the training staff gets the brunt of it when there's a lot of injuries on the injury report and soft tissue stuff and things like that. But these are the situations where they actually have, I think, an impact in trying to get them back healthy and rehabbing those injuries. And both those guys, and credit to obviously Love and Watson as well, but getting those guys back and playing at that level, in the time that they did, I think deserves a lot of credit as well. Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. I want to start with something for you guys, and I want your reactions to it. I think Green Bay found their defense and their defensive alignment in the last couple of weeks. I think Keyshawn Nixon on the outside might actually end up being their top outside corner outside of Jair Alexander. Like, I think he has jumped Eric Stokes and certainly Carrington Valentine, who I don't think played a snap on defense in this game. And Javon Bullard in the slot, I have to eat a little bit of crow on that one. I'm like, I think Javon Bullard is a better safety. I still think he might end up being a better safety, but I think the rise of Evan Williams basically makes it that, hey, you still got to get this guy on the field. And so far, so good with Javon Bullard in the slot. And then you add Edgerrin Cooper with more playing time in that nickel linebacker position. Evan Williams as basically the starting safety, especially in the nickel. This defense looks faster. It looks more playmaking. And I thought it looked more dominant today with this lineup out on the field. I think they have found their lineup. I think they have found their scheme. I think they found their personnel groupings, and it just looked so much night and day different than what it did earlier in the season. I loved what they did in this game. And I think just getting more Evan Williams on the field, more Edgerrin Cooper on the field, I think this is the formula, and I think they figured it out.
Just on the Nixon part of it, and Andy, you would know more. Both of you would know more. So tell me if I'm wrong. And this is dumb football guy analysis, but sometimes dumb analysis is good analysis. Like Keyshawn Nixon has never struck me as biggest, fastest, strongest, most gifted blue chip player who would be taken at the top of the draft. But he always finds ways to impress at the football stuff. Like he makes good plays on the ball. That play that he made against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs last year is an example. The play knocking that ball out on, I thought it was a third down early. I would have to go back and look, right? Ripping that ball out. Like he's going to get beat because he's not the blue chip athlete, speed, size, length that some other outside corners are. But that actually might work okay for Jeff Hafley's defense, because I think Hafley's defense a little bit in the equation is, well, we're going to give up some plays. Okay, well, Nixon will, but I also think when there are opportunities to make plays, I trust him to go get a ball or to dislodge or to make a football play, maybe as much as anyone. That's always kind of been my read on Keyshawn Nixon, for better or worse.
Yeah, I like that. Perri, your thoughts on the defense?
I agree with you, but I want to see it on a more consistent basis.
For
like
sure.
If this, like I'm tentative because a few things. One, I think this defense is very much predicated on Jair being healthy. Like him not playing versus him playing is just night and day difference. I also think it helped that Marvin Harrison Jr. basically didn't play in this game. Like they were just like throwing a Trey McBride and like nobody else. I want to see it, to your point, Andy, at their height against like the Texans next week. I think it's going to be like a really, really big test for this defense, and especially this alignment and like what they're looking at. I thought the pressure was better this week. Granted, Kyler Murray is a very difficult guy to get down, so no sacks isn't like necessarily too alarming to me, but you could tell like the interior pressure is coming along. I just think that is still the missing piece here. If they can start to like really get to the quarterback in a meaningful way, then I think this will be complete. I believe it's going to get there. I'm not, I think, necessarily as concerned as everybody else, because I see it getting there. But and I think Hafley is going to call he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve when it comes to calling like pressure and creative blitzes. But I want to see them do it against maybe a more prolific passing offense before I make any kind of more declarative claim.
And I guess I want to sort of correct myself, because you bring up a great point. I'm in no way saying like the defense has arrived and this is like they're now a great defense or anything like that. I think this is the right formula of players in the right spots.
100%.
And it just felt faster, especially with Cooper and Bullard in the slot and Evan Williams out there at safety. It felt more playmaking. And again, to your point, it's still a very small sample size, and against different situations and different players, it could look and feel totally different. So we are going to have to wait and see. It just feels like more Evan Williams plus more Edgerrin Cooper plus Bullard in the slot plus Nixon on the outside equals good. And I'm excited about it and want to see, even to your point, next week. And I do think there's going to be some interesting challenges with Houston, with Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs potentially lining up in the slot. Are you still able to get away with Javon Bullard when you've got the bigger, the better wide receivers and route runners that can maybe beat him a little bit more from a pure coverage standpoint? I think those things will remain to be seen. But I also think that Jeff Hafley has shown that he will mix and match. And if it becomes to the point where, like, all right, Tank Dell is just beating Javon Bullard in the slot, we can't keep doing that. All right, then they're going to go back to Nixon, or they'll put Jair in there, whatever they need to do to win that individual matchup. And we might see some weeks where Bullard isn't able to be in the slot and they have to choose between Williams and Bullard at safety a little bit more. And they might need more pure cover corners on the field. But I just think overall, they've really experimented with some things these past weeks, and I think the experiments have come out very, very well.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly agree. I want Evan Williams and Javon Bullard on the field at the same time as much as humanly possible. And I think more Edgerrin Cooper, the more he's played, the better he looks. This young group is just playing a more aggressive and attacking style defense that we haven't seen in a long time. And it's good. It's producing results, right? You can't necessarily live and die off of turnovers in this league, but the Packers are producing turnovers at like an astoundingly alarming rate that I'm almost like, well, if you're going to get like 2 to 4 every game and that's the norm, I mean, I guess we can just count on them, because no pick in this game, but obviously the three fumbles and fumble recoveries. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with you. I do agree with you. I don't know. I guess I have defense PTSD and need to see some consistency. I do believe they'll do it though. I like what I'm seeing.
No, very fair points. Grant?
I would just like to, and I know we have some defenders we're going to talk about. I think this pass rush still has a long way to go. Like individuals, like if Rashawn Gary's not going to be getting quarterbacks on the ground like Kyler Murray because they're mobile, that's fine. This is again another dumb football point. I would just like to see Rashawn Gary clobber someone. Like I want him to win a rep where I go, oh my God, even if he doesn't make the sack, you know what I mean? Like even if he chases the quarterback the other way, whatever. Like I just want to see a rep where he just obliterates someone. And it just seems to me like a lot of times when I watch him, he's just kind of banging his head against a wall with a bull rush. So like that's one thought I had today is like one of these weeks, I just want to see a highlight play from Rashawn Gary, even if it doesn't result in a sack, because I think things like that matter. Might be dumb.
Yeah, on the rewatch, I was trying to watch the pass rush a little bit closer. I actually thought the pass rush for the most part did a pretty good job in this game, especially on the defensive interior. And I think this is where we also have to talk about this defensive front did a phenomenal job on Kyler Murray, the rusher, and just not allowing him to win with his legs at all. 7 carries, 14 yards. I mean, these are some of the games he's had on the ground so far this year. 7 for 83 and a touchdown, 5 for 45, 5 for 59, 5 for 57. In 4 of the 5 games that he's had so far, he's gone for 45 plus on the ground and averaged, basically over 60 yards on the ground per game. So he did have the 1 carry for 3 yards against the Commanders, but they were so far out of it early that they didn't really even get to the point where Kyler could beat him too much with the legs. So I thought Green Bay did a phenomenal job of really keeping him in the pocket and not allowing him to get outside, break outside. We saw the awesome play by Evan Williams on the read option where he took him to the ground and caused that huge 4th down. So just a really tremendous job by the defensive front. I thought playing together as a unit and making sure that Kyler was not going to be able to scramble to the outside or just scramble, period. And I thought that was a real key to success for the defense in this game.
That Evan Williams play that you mentioned, the Packers have been looking for a player who can do that since 2011. Like that's my favorite highlight of the game is I rewind because I was watching the YouTube highlights. I backed it up so many times to watch Evan Williams go, nope, he's going to keep it and go right with him. And it seems like such a simple thing. Like it doesn't seem like it's, that impressive of a play, but I've seen so many, not just Packers defenders. I don't just want to act like the Packers are the only team whose defenses have let them down over the years, but like that's a really hard play. And he made that read and that play look really, really easy. And I don't know that that's going to get a lot of run this week. We talk about highlights from this game, but you're absolutely right, Andy. I think that was one of the most impressive plays of the game.
good defense is the combination of good play calling with great execution. And there was a play last year. I think it was Keyshawn Nixon who came off the edge. I want to say it might have been against the Giants and Tommy DeVito, where there was a play where Joe Barry called the perfect play, and he brought a corner off the edge, and they had, I think it was DeVito, dead to rights, and the corner missed the play, and DeVito got outside and ran for a bunch of yards on the play. And I said at the time, I'm like, we can talk about Joe Barry all we want and that it's time to move on, et cetera. And that can be true. But I'm like, when you call the perfect play call, your guy has to go out and execute it, and he's got to get that guy to the ground. And Green Bay didn't last year. It ends up in a huge run. And then you talk about how the defense is so bad. Well, it takes a good play call and great execution. And in this play, that was a great play call by Jeff Hafley. They had one defender that was to the running back, another defender in Williams that was for the quarterback. He calls it perfectly. They were clearly planned for this sort of situation with Kyler keeping it. He had the 50-some yard run against the 49ers a week ago when he did the exact same thing. Green Bay was perfectly prepared for it, called the perfect play, but give Evan Williams the credit because he actually went and executed it, got him to the ground, which is, so to your point, Grant, so much easier said than done, because, you know, Evan Williams was asked this week about how do you get Kyler Murray to the ground? And he's like, that's a good question. Like, it's not an easy thing where even if you get him right in that spot, he might just make a juke and he's like gone. So credit to Hafley, but credit to Evan Williams on that play as well.
Well, and there was just one more detail. Like, I love this play so much. There was no moment where he was like caught guessing. There wasn't even a split second where he's like, oh shoot, I got to get back outside. Like, he read that, like he knew exactly what Kyler Murray was going to do. Like, so I'm going to go watch that play again when we're done recording. But like, yeah, if they would have had a guy like that in 2013 or what, you know, like how many running quarterbacks just murdered them over and over again with that. And he read it and made that play as confidently, I think, as I've seen a Packers defender do that recently. Yeah.
Perri, tell me more about Evan Williams, because he also had the huge forced fumble in this one. Like, he's been so much above as advertised. 4th round pick, Green Bay moves up for him in the trade, and he's just like already integrated himself in this defense to the point where he's literally made it that you cannot keep him off the field.
No, you can't. It's crazy to me that he's a rookie. He certainly doesn't play like a rookie, and he certainly doesn't speak like a rookie when you listen to him in the locker room or like when he speaks to the media. Very, very poised and very clear high football IQ. I also thought that the punch out was something that like we've been waiting to see. I feel like Packers defenders have been like attempting the punch out for forever, and it never works. It
Agreed.
Never goes well, and inevitably they just end up missing a tackle because they are trying to punch the ball out, and we're like, just tackle him. Well, Evan Williams, you can continue to try punching the ball out when it works.
Random side question. Will there be a time that somebody gets called for just punch? Because you're not allowed to just punch a player. And there are times where like guys miss the ball and literally just punch the player. Like at some point, I don't know. It's like, it feels like at some point somebody's going to get called for just punching a player by completely missing the ball and just walloping a player like right in the chest or something. But I don't know. Well, I'm not saying from a Packers standpoint. I'm saying in general, like it's always funny to me. But it was an awesome play by Evan Williams. He's an absolute stud. He's a super fun player. And I'm very, very glad that Green Bay moved up in the 4th round to go get him. I know it was a bit of a panned pick at the time of people not liking that move. Seems like it's turned out pretty okay so far. All right, let's talk about some quick hitters. Braden Narvison misses another kick. Perri, I'll start with you on this one. Where are you at on the Braden Narvison nervous train / is it time to move on?
I mean, I was watching and I'm like, I can't watch. And anything above 40 yards. And that's just it's not okay. A 44-yarder, that should be automatic in the NFL. I'm definitely starting to lose my patience a little bit. I wouldn't hate competition being brought in. I think that would be fair. However, my follow-up question to myself is like, what competition? Like, if there was competition out there, I think the Packers would have brought them in. So that's really where I'm at with it. The announcers put up a stat while I was watching that he's missed the most kicks in the NFL of all kickers. So it's just not a good spot because you're going to win and lose some games off his leg. And I don't think the Packers are in position to do that.
Chad Ryland, the Cardinals kicker today, will likely be a free agent very soon because obviously Matt Prater is their primary kicker. Ryland was just brought in for the game. It's one option. I don't know that it's a great option. I don't know at this point. It's frustrating. Grant, what were you going to say?
Chad Ryland, correct me if I'm wrong, he's Anders Carlson to the Patriots, right? Like he was the guy they drafted last year and then decided not good enough. So
correct.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they could get somebody else's Anders Carlson. What do you even do with Narveson? Just kick as little as possible. There was a moment last week, and I was looking at the play-by-play to try to figure out maybe what drive it was, but I was watching Packers Rams, and I was like doing work at my desk, and they were on like the Rams 45, and they had a negative play of, a yard or two, and Romo made a comment about how you got to be careful. This will push you out of field goal range. I'm like, Tony, they're not even close, man. Like you can't I can't remember now I'm going to have to go back and try to figure out what it was, but Romo made a comment about the Packers possibly getting out of field goal range. I'm like, dude, they're 15 to 20 yards away from being in Narveson's field goal range, which is like chip shot or nothing else. So I don't know. I think this is kind of their guy to live or die with until, some amazing veteran were to come available, but that doesn't happen. So I think at this point, he's just the guy. And I wish I had something better to add other than a funny Tony Romo anecdote, but that's where Braden Narveson has me. Sorry.
I'm just interested in like, what's the line, right? Like, does he have to have like an 0-for-4 game? Does he have to he's already missed a 35-yarder. He's been very clearly the worst kicker in football so far this year. It's not remote. I mean, you could argue maybe Cade York because he went 0-for-2 in his first game and got cut. Outside of that, there's no really comparison. He's missed more kicks than anyone. And again, it's some pretty easy 40-yarders and a 35-yarder included in that. There's no realm in which I think you can feel confident when he goes out there to take a kick. You can tell that Matt is more apt to go for a 4th and 2 or whatever, rather than kicking a long field goal. I just don't know that you can survive the year with that. And people were asking me on the post-game chat, is there like, well, who should the Packers trade for at the trade deadline? And I was going position by position, and I'm like, there's not really a ton of positions that make sense until we got to kicker. And I'm like, if there's a team that's willing to sell at the trade deadline and is very clearly, not there, the Carolina Panthers would be, I think Eddie Pinheiro is their kicker. Like if they were willing to be like, hey, yep, we'll trade you Pinheiro. Like obviously our season's done anyway, and Green Bay could get that. And I believe Pinheiro's a free agent next year. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the case. Like maybe you just trade for Pinheiro. I don't know. I don't have a great answer to it, but if there is a position that is a weakness that maybe you can throw something at the deadline, maybe it actually is kicker, and maybe they will address it that way. I don't know at this point. Tough to fathom where they go from here, but I am curious where that line in the sand is. All right, some other just really quick notes. Injuries in this one. Dontavian Wicks went out in this game, did not return. He said after that he is day-to-day, shouldn't be anything long-term. So hopefully he can be back sooner rather than later. Josh Jacobs seemed like he got nicked up a little bit. I think it was elbow that was reported. He didn't finish the game. Just it felt more like they were up by enough, and why not give the other running backs an opportunity to close it out? But my hope is that he's going to be okay. And then Josh Myers went out for a little bit. He did end up coming back in the game, so that was a good sign there. I didn't see anyone else that was injured. Did you guys recognize anyone else that went out hurt?
No, I mean, I got worried for a sec when Jaden Reed left the field, and then was very thrilled when he came back. But that, I guess, unless he's got a little soreness or anything moving forward, I didn't expect that. That wasn't on my radar to watch moving forward. I was just very relieved when he came back in.
Yeah, he is ankle taped, but he went right back in. So that was a great sign there. Some other ones really quick. Jordan Morgan returned and started in that rotation with Sean Ryan right back there. They basically were going drive by drive and swapping around. I thought first glance, he looked good. I'll be interested to watch the all-22 there. It was nice to not be the team that was committing all the penalties in this game. So thank you, Arizona, for that. It did seem like Green Bay cleaned up most of the penalties. There were still a couple here and there. Ben Sims, I thought in limited time looked like a really solid tight end too. Had a couple nice catches, including that one along the sideline where if Love hits him in stride, might have gone even for a bigger play. And then, of course, the Xavier McKinney streak is officially over. So it's going to have to start a new one coming up next week. And then the last one I did want to discuss just really quick is that Jaden Reed punt return. I talked about this on the post game. You brought it. Was it Grant? You brought it up earlier, or one of you guys did? Yeah, Grant. This might sound weird. I kind of don't think that Jaden Reed's that great of a punt returner anyway. And it's sort of weird because he's the most dynamic player with the ball in his hands. He's unbelievable. I'm not trying to throw shade at Jaden Reed at all because he's awesome. He's freaking awesome. But like he does a little hesitation sometimes at like the punt return, and I don't know. There doesn't seem to be anything super dynamic there for him. And we saw him fumble today, although he got hurt and it did get called back because of a penalty. And then you're also risking his potential injury there. Now, I don't know that Keyshawn Nixon is the answer fully, because I think Nixon is more apt to take some gambles. Even that play that he caught, like the defender was right there, and thankfully he still caught it and there was no issue. But he takes some more chances, and he doesn't always have the softest hands as a punt returner. So I don't know that there's a perfect answer, but I am maybe willing to revisit the Jaden Reed as punt returner for a variety of different reasons.
It's not like, just because you're a dynamic playmaker doesn't mean I think you're necessarily going to be a good returner. And I think the skills are not necessarily interchangeable. And I'm with Grant. I'm at the point where Jaden is just way too valuable to be getting even remotely potentially hurt on those. There are plenty of other guys. I think, if you want to put Keyshawn back there, we can talk about any number of the other running back. We can probably have a whole episode about who we could replace Jaden Reed with back there. I do not want him back there, because to your point, Andy, it's not like he's doing like these amazing returns every game. And you're like, well, he's valuable. He's adding something in these returns it's tangible to the team. That's not happening. And we're at like potentially a net negative with him there. No chances. I don't like it.
Yeah. And we'll see if they do make any changes. It's not like, again, Nixon could be a possibility. It's weird that there's not really anyone else. Like, maybe Melton, I don't know. There's not like anyone else that's like a clear and obvious, like, yep, he'd be great there. So I don't know. We'll see what they do. My guess is Jaden Reed and Keyshawn Nixon kind of continue to rotate at that spot, but that is one that I'm a little bit more of like, maybe it's time to find something a little bit different. NFC North remains a freaking buzzsaw. They go 3-0. Of course, Vikings had a bye. Vikings at 5-0, Lions at 4-1. They go right through freaking Dallas like they weren't even there. Green Bay goes to 4-2. Chicago goes to 4-2 by beating Jacksonville in the London game. The big news, though, Aiden Hutchinson broke his tibia. That was a brutal looking injury. He is their pass rush. Marcus Davenport is already out for the year. They are probably going to have to go at by the trade deadline and try to find somebody. Max Crosby was pushing coaches on the sidelines today with the Raiders. I don't know if that ends up happening. We know we've got the whole Jet situation going on with Hassan Reddick, which seems super weird. I don't know what they're going to do there, but awesome day for the Lions overall, but a brutal, brutal loss. Like, Aiden Hutchinson is their defense and their pass rush. And that is a unbelievable blow to them, an unbelievable blow to the player that might have been one of the front runners, if not the front runner for defensive player of the year so far. That is a big time loss for Detroit. But NFC North remains freaking awesome and super competitive.
That's a massive bummer for Detroit. I just couldn't believe how much better. Not to immediately start talking about the game, but I think you said what needed to be said about Hutchinson, and we're obviously all really sympathetic for a player like that getting injured. I could not believe how much better the Lions looked than the Cowboys today. Like, I'm not anti-Cowboys. In fact, like last year, picking and betting the Cowboys to cover massive spreads at home, like they're just a lock. Like, that's what they did. And I know that's not what today was, but if you like lined up all the players in that game and ordered them, like how many Lions would be in the top 10? I mean, the talent disparity, the energy disparity, it was very jarring, which I think is a testament to the Lions, but also like, man, the Cowboys they don't appear to be what they've been. And maybe the Packers doing what they did to them in the playoffs. I don't know. Maybe they got the ball rolling on something. I don't know. But that was a jarring result. And yeah, that's only one of 4 teams in the NFC North that are all playing really well right now, to your point.
I think the Lions being the amazing is like the least surprising part of the NFC North being so good. I mean, the Vikings being undefeated at this point with the way that their roster looked going into the season, and the Bears having the start to the season that they have with their rookie quarterback is more shocking to me. Now, granted, the Bears are going to run into some of like the better teams on the schedule that the Packers are also going to play. And I'd be curious to see how they do against them. They beat Jacksonville. Like, I expect the Packers to beat Jacksonville as well. They're not exactly having the best season. But Caleb looks like he's come up much, much faster than I necessarily expected him to. Look, it's fun. I think it's fun to have a really like competitive division. I think it makes the Packers better to have a competitive division, to like sharpen themselves in the regular season for the times when hopefully they make the playoffs. I enjoy that. Obviously, we've been used to them just like whooping every other team for a while, having like maybe a good game against Detroit every once in a while, maybe a good game against the Vikings. I don't know. I think it's fun. Obviously, it makes division games a lot more important to win. So like there's a lot of pressure there when those games come up now on the schedule. But yeah, the fact that all 4 would make the playoffs if the season ended after this week is pretty crazy. I would not have put my money on that before the season started.
We got a little bit of a change now with the Falcons winning their game. So now technically Chicago would be the 8th seed right now. Green Bay would be 7, Detroit would be 5, and Minnesota would be 1. So they're right there. And Chicago is at 4-2 at that 8th seed, the same as Tampa and Green Bay, all at 4-2. So yeah, still very, very crazy that for all 4 teams in the NFC are in the top 8 and in the running for that spot. Next week will be a huge week. We've got Packers, Texans, of course. They are currently 3-point favorites over Houston. The Bears have a bye, and we get Minnesota versus Detroit as well. So should be a very fun week in the NFC North. Perri, Grant, awesome freaking stuff as always. Any final thoughts or any plugs that you want to hit on your way out? Grant, I will start with you.
Well, the Wisco Sports Show on the radio, a couple different affiliates. If you follow me on Twitter, live streams as well at Wisco Grant. I'm very excited to see Packers Texans next week. So that's really my only closing Packers thought. And also, I love the Ben Sims shout out, Andy. Something I was thinking about driving home listening to the postgame tonight. It's like if I was a bottom of the roster tight end, blocker, occasional pass catcher, like I would want to play in Matt LaFleur's offense. So I like seeing him get a catch today. I appreciate the mention.
Andrew Beck had an interesting role in this game too. Like he had a decent amount of snaps in this one. So they had a role for him as well. Like to your point, like Matt's just going to get all those guys involved and use them to the best of their ability. And we just saw that play out again. Perri, final thoughts, plugs, anything else?
Yeah, just Pax what she said. Spotify, podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, YouTube. YouTube is fun. You can watch Maggie and I talk about football too. I have had Packers Texans circled on my calendar since we got the schedule. It is going to be like, I hope it doesn't disappoint. I hope it's not one of those like sloppy, gross, like 10-13 games. I want CJ Stroud and Jordan to light it the heck up. I just think it's going to be really fun to like total superstars who are getting compared to one another a lot. They're starting season last year for good reason, like good comparisons of like how good their first seasons as starters were. One AFC, one NFC. It's not necessarily like too important of a game necessarily from like a playoff standpoint for either. Just one wants to win, which makes it even more fun. Just like a very uncommon opponent. But the Texans look really good, and I'm really excited for this one.
Still can't believe CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love is a noon game. It just seems completely wrong. It feels like it should be a prime. Yeah, as we're chilling through Giants Bengals right now on Sunday Night Football, just everything seems a little bit warped here. But either way, should be a massively fun game next week. Of course, make sure to follow Grant at Wisco Grant. You can find Perri at Perri_Goldstein. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. That is going to do it for us today. Enjoy your Victory Monday. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.